entrepreneur who has done amazing things in such a short space of time. He's very young, way younger than me, and he was nominated. I mean, he won an award by Forbes, being one of the most enterprising people under 30. Manufactures drones, self-taught, sells them, exports them around the world, and he's doing all that from Knysna. Please get up on your feet and welcome, please stand up, and welcome Duran De Villiers. Hey Duran. Great. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for me, like when I was looking you up, it was so amazing to see, like, wow, what you're doing here is what a lot of us just dream of doing, and so it's really a great pleasure to have you as Start of Grind.
I appreciate the invite.
Awesome.
It's nice being here.
Great. Will you tell us, if we start from just understanding, learning about your background. You were born in Joburg, and then you moved down here.
Correct, yeah, boring stuff. Born in Johannesburg, I moved down with my dad and my brother when I was about 8 or 9. So we spent most of my entire life basically growing up in Knysna. Went to primary school there, high school there. As I said, some boring stuff, so I'll skip over it quickly. 2002, when I matriculated, I think I matriculated. We immigrated to New Zealand as a family. My brother, my dad, my stepmom, myself. I was there for a very short time, only 6 months. Wasn't for me, came back. Obviously I had a love affair this side, so that was a reason for coming back. And yeah, so it's a kind of a brief history of the school.
Brilliant. And when you moved to New Zealand, was it with like a particular view, you wanted to do something, or?
No, I finished school not knowing much about what I wanted to do. I never had the opportunity to study, so we didn't. My brother nor myself, could go study tertiary education. So yeah, we just immigrated to New Zealand for a better life. That was the plan, at least from my dad's side. But as soon as we got there, I came back. I was there for 6 months. So yeah, it wasn't exactly a plan. I've never really had a plan, especially that early. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Came back literally with a suitcase, a bag, and some clothes. Just took it from there.
Yeah, and then you got a job as a waiter, right?
Yeah, as I said, I came back from New Zealand with very little. Started wagering just to kind of make ends meet. Then got involved, before we left I was involved with the church locally in Knysna. When I came back, we started a whole media production section of the church, which I kind of jumped head first into that, and I was there for about 3 years. We did an international television program, so I cut my teeth in media production, a lot of photography. We did a half-an-hour broadcast, used to be, so I started cutting my teeth and getting some experience in media.
And something which I find really remarkable about you is that you were teaching yourself stuff as you're going. And that with photography, you taught yourself, and you were shooting that you mentioned that you shot over 150 weddings.
Yeah, so again, long story short, I worked at the church for some time, and there again taught myself the editing, and this was television standard half-an-hour broadcast that we did from scratch. I trained the camera guys, and left there, bought a camera. Following weekend did my first wedding, and since then I've done quite a few weddings, and then started a media production company called Motion Pixel in the Garden Route, which grew to be one of the biggest, probably the biggest media production company this side of Cape Town, or that side of Cape Town, and kind of between PE. So we did a lot of television productions, a lot of kind of high-end photography, high school front covers, and we had a studio that we built by hand. We did kind of boutique photography, anything, commercial stuff, a lot of weddings. So again, yeah, cut my teeth in media production.
And then you transitioned into building drones.
Yeah, we hired a guy, and he's actually my right-hand man now as a product manager. With a whole media production company and doing a lot of photography, I struggled finding camera lighting to use for our own shoots, so off-camera strobe lighting and that kind of stuff. So I started just importing some lights, and then I thought I might as well make a business out of it called Camera Light, which is a camera lighting, kind of a specialized camera lighting, off-camera lighting online store, which I hired Yaku for. And then eventually, got into the whole drone side and sold that. That still runs today, which is quite cool. But as a media production company, saw the potential. This was again 6, 7, 8 years ago. So this is long before the term drone was even, used. This was before DJI came about with the Phantoms, and I literally saw potential for a media production company to stick very rudimentary action cameras. This was again even before GoPro was really a GoPro. So on RC helicopters, so the footage was terrible. But then, I downloaded a free version of AutoCAD, started designing our own actual drones, and again, this was when you had to buy all the bare PC boards and electronics and sold everything together in the autopilots, and so just jumped in and built our first big octocopter for the media production company. So the whole plan was just to build a drone for the media production company so we can shoot aerials that our competitors can't. And you can't do it with manned helicopters. I fly manned helicopters. You just can't get in that close with a big heli compared to a drone. And I fell in love. Before I fell in love with it, we did quite a bit of shooting. I was one of the first guys in the country actually flying drones and flying big drones on film sets and commercials. We did a lot of our own media productions. It's still all online. And then I figured that sooner or later everyone's going to be flying drones as a service, and there'll be very few, if any, manufacturers. So I fell in love with the technology and the hardware side, and I figured, let's start making drones instead of flying drones, and that's how it all started.
Wow, that's incredible. And with that, did you immediately think that, okay, let me start selling this internationally, or you found, how did you sell your first one? Who bought that, and what?
I don't know. I don't know where it's from, but I have a knack to package a whole thing and put it together, which I did with Motion Pixel and I did with Camera Light. And the drone thing was very much the same. I had an idea for a product. I knew there was a gap or a demand for that product, even if the clients weren't aware of that gap. So we literally went from a media production company to a manufacturing company, but the principles apply. Put up a website. We made the drone design that I came up with was very unique to us. And again, back then, we were the first foldable quadcopter you could actually buy off the shelf as a commercial quadcopter. We were the first company to do a front-mounted gimbal for the GoPro. We were the first company to do a bunch of stuff on the quadcopter side. But it was pretty straightforward. Put up a website, make the drone look very, unique to your identity. Steady Drone was the name back then. So we had the red color. So if you looked online and you saw a steady drone, you knew it was a steady drone. Then for the media production company doing 300,000-400,000 rand a year turnover, we did 14 million in our first year at steady drone. So we had that initial spike. Yeah.
That's amazing. And the name, what made you change the name from Steady Drones to ALTI UAS?
We had Steady Drone for quite a few years. I think it was 6 or 7 years. We've been doing the multi-rotors, so we had quite a range of different multi-rotors. So when I say multi-rotors, I mean a drone like a quadcopter. So a quadcopter is technically a multi-rotor, but you have drones that have 6 blades or 8 propellers instead of 4. You have coax multi-rotors. So, the advantage of a multi-rotor is you can hover it very stable. You can get it into places. I did. Crazy thing about it, I did on a big octocopter inside a casino where I fly that far from someone's head, inside the casino to get a shot that you just couldn't do with a jib or a dolly or. So that's the advantage of a multi-rotor, but the disadvantage is endurance. Typically, the bigger stuff, 10, 15 minutes. On the more modern multi-rode is now 25, 30 minutes, but that's a disadvantage. So in 2015, late 2015, I saw the potential of combining a quadcopter and a fixed wing. So we weren't technically the first company to do it, but we were the first company to do an actual product you could buy. Yeah, so that's how we started. I went from Steady Drone to ALTI. Steady Drone was very youthy. It was for guys who wanted to purchase a quadcopter for themselves or for their production company, or for smaller commercial type applications. ALTI is a whole different product. The price is very different. The identity, the type of clients that would purchase them. So that's why we did the name change.
And what is the meaning of ALTI UAS?
ALTI is just the wordplay of altitude.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And UAS?
Unmanned aerial system.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Great. And your clients, what do they mainly use your drones for?
Well, that's the exciting thing about what we're doing. The drone industry as a whole is so new. We're literally, along with many other companies, writing the rules and the regulations, literally, as we're going. Some of them aren't writing the regulations. But, yeah, so in terms of who's using them, that's also quite exciting because we don't even know often. You sell the system, you have no idea what it's being used for. It's not bad. But, on the multi-rotor side, because when drones really became a thing, it was all about getting photographs or videos from the sky. So that's where it started in the media realm, but very quickly, branched out to agriculture to do multi or hyperspectral sensors, thermal sensors, and then the whole commercial and industrial kind of thing came in. So we have clients doing, aerial photography, aerial videos on the multi-rotor systems. And then on the current systems, the much bigger fixed-wing systems, we can do 12 hours in a single flight. We can do ranges of 900 kilometers in a single flight. So the use cases have obviously differed, have changed quite a bit. Clients are now doing along oil pipeline inspections or mapping of a big agricultural piece of land where you typically do 30, 40 flights with a smaller fixed-wing, we can do it in a single flight for hours.
And what lessons would you give somebody who wants to get into new industry and is cutting edge, where you know that a lot of people don't know yet, but they're going to need it later, and it's going to be massive? What advice would you give?
It obviously depends on the industry and what they want to do, but I think I had quite a few of these type of events and speaking to people who are starting something up, I always get the question, where did you get the funding? And
where did you get the funding?
What funding? Again, I think I'm your one slide in terms of the expert. We don't have any experts, literally. We've only recently hired an actual engineer who's an actual engineer. Everything else, we have, our average age of our technicians is probably 22. But kind of young computer gamer guys, IT guys who are bright, but we don't have experts. You need experts for certain things. We obviously get them in when we need them. But in terms of the funding, that question always comes up. Coming back to your question, where do we get the funding? To date, we haven't taken a single cent of external funding or internal funding at all. So I think that's the biggest thing, is people have an idea, they have a product, but they wait for funding.
Yeah.
And so they spend all the energy on funding. We went from a media production company, we sold 1 drone, and then we sold 2 drones, then we sold 4, and then we did 14 million in our first year, with profits organically. Obviously, every business isn't exactly like this. Profit margins are fairly high because it's an expensive system. But yeah, I think in terms of someone starting a business, don't wait for funding, just actually get to it.
That's fantastic, because I have similar conversations when I'm working with entrepreneurs where they're saying, look, I need $1 million to start. Fund my idea, 1 million. It's a big jump. Even then, it's more of people will fund you if they ever do it. When you got a track record, for the most part, it's not just purely a deal, you haven't done anything, and like you've done something, and people, even funders, investors, will respect people like you who've actually done something. And then if you said, look, I'm doing these millions, I would like to do more if you give me this. And when you don't need the money, you're actually in a good position to negotiate than trying to raise funding when you actually need the money.
Yeah, I think, again, it depends on the business. We were fortunate enough to get into the drone industry and manufacturing when we did very early on. But yeah, we literally grew the business with the profits of the previous unit sale, and then we're still doing that today. We've now obviously have had quite a few bigger companies and bigger companies wanting to invest or buy us out, or kind of consolidate us. But it hasn't been right. We're now only getting to a stage now where we can start looking at taking on some serious funding to take the business to a whole different level.
And what were some of your low points, like your failures? Some moments you're saying, why am I doing this?
I think we've been very fortunate, and I would have to really think of really low points. I think some of them are quite recent in terms of some of the crashes we've had. I think we've had a really good record of not crashing aircraft, and especially a new aircraft. It costs you it's $95,000 as a base. So we're flying, and there's no drone insurance. You fly, you crash it, you lose that amount of money. So, but in the 2 years of flying, the transition, I'm specifically talking about the new vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. We've crashed 2 aircraft. So in 2 years of flying, it's not bad. But when it hits the ground at 200 kilometers an hour, yeah, that's literally a low point.
That's really crashing.
Yeah.
I see. And what would be, like, I know you talked about them, what are some of your major successes right now, like your proudest moments as you, Duran, and then us as a business?
Well, if I split them, personal and business, which is very difficult to do. But yeah, in terms of the business side, I'm particularly proud of the fact that we've grown this business with nothing. From nothing, with nothing, to date with no funding at all. And I always get the question, where did you get your funding? How much did you get? And we didn't. We built it with organic profits. Obviously, not every company can do that, depending on the product you're actually doing.
Yeah.
But it's also all risk. I literally have all my eggs in one basket. So there's, I guess, the downside if we fail. we fail. But on the positive side, yeah, we're able to do this type of business in Knysna. Every time I come to Cape Town, one day is enough, and I want to go back to Knysna. We obviously had a lifestyle there. But I think a big part of being in a place like that is you don't get absorbed into a lot of that type of mentality. Looking for funding, you're chatting with a lot of people doing the same thing, so you kind of get drawn into that. And I was just isolated, there in our team, so we didn't have any outside influence. You need to get funding, you need to do this. We just did our thing. And we're still just doing our thing, down there. But in terms of highlights, I think that would probably be the biggest one. We're building a big aircraft now, which is 6-meter wingspan, 20 plus hours endurance. It'll do 2,000 kilometers in a single flight. And if you check the website, they can take off and land vertically. So it's a quadcopter component. So they take off just like a normal drone would, and then at altitude we push them into forward fixed wing speed. Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting what you say, because I encounter that with a lot of entrepreneurs. So here, again, we're running Startup Grind in 3 countries and working now with so many countries, 21 countries now. Is that you have almost like 2 types of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs who just get shit done, and the other ones who are chasing competitions.
Well, you get entrepreneurs and then people who aren't actually entrepreneurs.
Yeah. They almost like it's a sexy thing to just get awards. So somebody say like, can you host me a Startup Grind? Say, what have you done? Say, oh, I won this, I won that, I won that. What have you done? No, I just won this and this and that. Or they're just chasing that, but to have an actual example of somebody like you and a lot of others that we have here, they're actually doing things, and some will balance it from it's actually doing and raising funding, and others just do stuff. I had to reach out to you. You didn't reach out to me to just hear your story. That's pretty impressive. So what are some of the lifestyle choices you had to make? Because like other people are kind of stuck because maybe they want to start. I want to start and pay myself a certain type of salary, or I want a certain type of car, or a certain type of house. For you, your life is your entrepreneur. You it's one and the same. You're a business and running that. What are some of the lifestyle choices you have to make it work?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I came back from New Zealand to pursue my wife. So we built a business together. But in terms of lifestyle choices, early on, I mean, we lived in a little room at the office for 2 years. But there's a quote, I think, I can't remember it exactly, but it's to do for the first couple of years of your life that no one wants to do, to live the rest of your life like no one can. Something like that. I mean, it takes a lot of hard work. There's, I think, the traditional mindset of getting funding, so you have the money to set it up. We literally started ground. We did that. I remember stages where we would look for rands to buy food out of a bag, but that didn't last very long. It was there. It was difficult, but then it grows. But as I mentioned, it is all or nothing. It is all risk, but it takes a lot of hard work, and what we're doing is very technical. So there are technical challenges of making a multi-rotor fly is one thing, making a drone, a fixed-wing fly as a multi-rotor, transitioning. There's a lot of different parts that go into making something like that. But it's, it's hours and hours and hours and putting it in.
And when you started, did you just work with friends? Did you hire a few people? Did you work with family? And how did you handle that? Like when you're starting out, you don't have salaries to pay people. And how did you create your group?
Well, again, we were profitable from day one. The media production company we hired, as I mentioned, Yaku, to run that, and then we did the whole drone thing. So we had myself, my wife, and Yaku, and another staff member. So we were already a team of 4, and then we just added. We were able to pay salaries. We have a really nice facility in Knysna. We're currently 12, 13 full-time staff. It's a small team, but my staff do the work of 3 or 4 normal staff because we have to. But that's, just as the business organically grew, we just added staff.
My wife here is a co-founder in my business, and the question I get asked a lot, which I'm going to ask you, what is it like working with your wife?
Not easy all the time, but being able to build something like that together is, it's quite special. Yeah.
Cool. We're going to start taking questions from the audience, and before we do that, regulation. So with drones, at most parts, even I think the US still that's not fully regulated, and here still you have to go through a lot of legal requirements and stuff. Does that impact you, and what advice do you give your would-be clients regarding that?
It impacts us a little bit, but not much as a manufacturer, and that's also the reason early on I didn't want to pursue the operating side, because I figured everyone's going to operate, they're going to come with rules and regulations, and if we do manufacturing, there's always going to be a need to purchase an aircraft. So in South Africa, it's very difficult. It's one of the hardest countries to do in terms of the regulations. We were one of the first, but it's not very polished. Just as a very rough idea, to be able to fly a drone in South Africa commercially, and I mean take photos of your neighbor's house and charge your money. You need to, there's a bunch of steps, but a very summarized, you need to submit for an RSC, which is a commercial kind of certificate to operate drones commercially. Your pilots need to have a remote pilot license, so you need to send them to a school for 2 weeks. They need to be able to fly a drone before then. That's 30 or 40 grand, depending on what the schools are charging now. And that's another problem I won't even get into. The schools are just charging people money over and over and over, and the schools know that they don't have work, but they're pumping the students through. There's 300 or 400 last count of people in the country with RPL licenses, but there's a handful of RSC holders. So your drone pilots need to have an RPL, you need an RSC, you need a bunch of other things, air to surface licenses, RLAs for the actual drone. The drone itself, no matter how big or small, needs to be registered with the CIA. It gets a tail number. You need medicals, you need aviation. It's basically manned aviation on commercial scale, copied and pasted to fly your Phantom to take real estate photographs.
It's like you're running your own Kulula. Okay, fantastic. We're going to take questions. There was a question there. To here.
From here. Yeah.
Sorry, what?
Use the mic.
My name is Tamir. Am I correct in saying you don't have any experience in mechanical engineering or more particularly a formal education in that?
Correct. We only have one person at the office who has a tertiary education.
Okay, so there was just a part at the beginning that was just brushed over that really took me back. So you were operating a small media company, doing lighting, media, etc., and then you taught yourself AutoCAD, mechanical engineering, computer science, and then made a drone company. Could you talk to us about the process of learning such a complex task, which takes people 4 years of studying? I'm 3 years into studying, and I have no idea where to even start with that. And yeah, just what that like learning to become that.
I think it obviously depends on the person. We've hired mechanical engineer in the past who, everyone is different. I have a natural knack for building things and making things and figuring out that this force is going to be pushed onto that pivot, and without having to have studied that. Obviously, I don't know everything by any means of the imagination, but Google, the best education you can get. And it's just momentum, building one drone, flying it, building another drone. I think I have a very good knack in terms of doing that, but it's just hours and hours and hours and hours of research. And people say they're learning, but there's learning and there's learning, and it's really just doing it, like really doing it, yeah.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Spencer. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I was just curious as to whether your company relies a lot on protecting its IP, or whether you really get away with just getting things done. So whether you have to put a lot of effort into that. And then the second question is whether you serve the defense industry, and whether that, whatever the answer there, whether that was a difficult decision to make, what the rationale was.
Two very good questions. The defense one, because on the multi-rotor side, the defense isn't really interested, but on the aircraft we're building now, because they can fly 12 hours, and the new one can do 20 plus hours with some serious payloads, you need to look at the Vassana agreement. If the actual aircraft, it's quite complicated, and you have to, with our larger aircraft, yes, we have to register with the DCAC. We've had the Department of Defense come in and inspect and do all that kind of stuff, so we're busy in the process of registering for the larger aircraft. For the current one, according to them, we don't need to. But on the moral side, I think was a bit of your question as well. The exciting things are on the commercial, delivering blood and doing, the 100 air hectares of, land in a single flight. That kind of stuff is far more exciting than selling it to some defense thing is going to stick it in a bunker and never use it. Even though that's where the money is, that's slowly changing. You'll see the bigger defense people also really trying to get their hands on the commercial drone side and the technology. And a lot of them are kind of buying up smaller companies. Your first question again?
Was about the IP.
Sorry, yeah.
How you protect.
Also, good question. We haven't bothered. If you can make a product that, and again, the main reason is things move so quickly in this industry right now. It's only been 5 years and we've gone from a small multi-rotor to 12 hours of endurance in a very short space of time. So you IP or you patent this, 2 months down the line, it's literally obsolete. So we haven't bothered. And also I think with our aircraft now, it's incredibly difficult to try and replicate what we've done. Even if we gave you an aircraft, to try and just do the composite work alone on the aircraft it'll take someone or a different company 2 or 3 years to try and replicate that. So we're not too bothered because the speed that the industry is moving is kind of offsetting the need to do patents.
I've got a question. The fourth industrial revolution is kind of a buzzword that's being thrown around now. how much in your manufacturing do you integrate like 3D printing and other new technologies?
Quite a lot. We have a 3D printer, SLA 3D printer. We have a normal FDM 3D printer. That's been a massive key to being able to rapid prototype. One example rings a bell. We have a client who needed to. So we sell the aircraft without payloads, and the clients specify whatever payloads they want to fly. So they wanted to do a Sony A6000 on a gimbal, and that's what we do. So we rapid prototype. So within I think it was a day and a half from receiving the camera to designing in SolidWorks, the mount, the gimbal, manufacturing the actual 3D printed parts, CNCing it in the back, installed in the aircraft, working, connected with a day and a half. So you can't do that if you have to go mold that plastic part or send the stuff away to get CNC. So we do use quite a lot of 3D printing stuff. Yeah.
The question there, and then we'll take the question there.
My name is Chris. I have had the maybe pleasure, not exactly the right word, to work in the local drone industry, but more on the defense side. And they're really characterized by big, complex organizations. You sound like a really lean, focused team. How did you go about deciding what to focus on inside your team? Because you can do mechanics, you can do electronics, software, the system side.
Yeah.
And what have you focused on, and what have you said, well, actually that's not my expertise and I don't need to do that inside policy?
Very cool question as well. We kind of reverse engineered. This is the aircraft we want. This is the features and the performance we want out of it, and we kind of work back. And it's obviously incredibly complicated, but we also don't want to reinvent the wheel. So with our current aircraft, we've basically done almost everything. So the composite airframe is our design. It's made. We have a composite manufacturing facility in Johannesburg. Everything else gets done in Knysna. The airframe is made there, shipped down as a big composite airframe. And if you come by, actually have a look at the composite work. It's on a different level. But so we did that. When we started 2015, you couldn't buy a off-the-shelf autopilot for a vertical take on an aircraft because it's technically it's two aircraft fused into one. So we did that from scratch. We did our own PC boards, the power distribution, the actual autopilot, the vibration mount for the autopilot, all the wiring, all the looming. We did the entire avionics system ourselves. Ground control systems as well. If you look at the website, we do that from scratch. On the new aircraft, being 6 meters and about 4 or 5 times larger, we're probably going to go with an autopilot company just for the autopilot itself, but the power distribution system, the smart battery packs, the charging, the aircraft, just about everything else we do. Yeah.
The question there.
So you've got this aerial platform, which is a rapid development type system. You deploy things quite quickly, you develop them quickly. From your perspective, what is the potential for sensor data generation and predictive analytics off that? Do you see that as anything as part of your future?
In what specific kind of field or area?
Anything from multispectral analysis, and you do the data analysis. You can even bring machine learning or AI to the field. There's also the potential for things like reinforcement learning, taking control of these quadcopters autonomously, autonomous detection.
Yeah, for us, being a manufacturer, we're focused on the aircraft itself. So we don't get too involved in different payloads because, again, based on the earlier question, our clients are doing so many different things with it. So EO, IR, daytime and thermal cameras, you switch between the two in a little turret. High-res imaging, multispectral, hyperspectral. The next thing now is LiDAR. That everyone wants to fly a LiDAR sensor. They're still a bit big. We can fit a LiDAR in the transition, but it's literally on the limit of the payload. They still tend to be 3, 4, 5 kilos, which will work on the Reach, which is our bigger aircraft, without a problem. But LiDAR is the biggest thing. But yeah, in terms of what clients are doing with the data, we're not that involved because our focus is the actual aircraft itself. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi there, it's Anthony. Why don't you get funding and scale the business?
We're busy doing, well, not the funding side, but yeah, as I mentioned, that we haven't needed to. I guess there's an argument, we could have grown quicker if we had funding, but it's a bit of a give and take in terms of what you want to do and achieve personally and what you want to do as a business. So we can get investors and we can, grow the business, but I most likely have to move to, a big city or, because the investment or, we can save so much cost doing it here or there, but then there's a balance of living in Knysna, being on a boat, I can go ride the motorbike, I fly paragliders, paramotor, fly manned helicopters along the beach, so there's that trade-off which ultimately, at the end of one's life, is kind of what it's all about. But yeah, we're busy right now doing ALTI USA, which will take sales to a different level. We're working with Colin Gwynn, who's the guy who put DJI on the map. I know him quite well. But yeah, we're still very young, so we're kind of growing it. And I think once we have our product range, which, the Transition is our core product. It's our only product. And we've been shipping that out for well over a year. The Reach is the next one, which will be available at the end of this year. We're kind of in mid to late stages of development. And then we have a smaller brother called the Ascend. So it'll be a 2-meter platform, a 3-meter platform, and a 6-meter platform. So small, medium, and large. And we're also actually doing an unmanned boat. So once we have those 4 products, specifically the 3 aircraft, solidified, selling well, then to me that's the stage to take it to a whole different level and get some funding in.
Thank you. Last 2 questions.
Thanks a lot for sharing. I'd like to know, what was your biggest motivation when you started out? And having achieved a portion or a relative success, how do you stay motivated and passionate about what it is that you do?
Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. The reason I had no education, I had nothing to do in terms of, no one's going to, pay for me to go study and become a lawyer or this or that. So at the very beginning, it was out of necessity. I had to make a life for myself. So that's where it started with me and my wife. So we had to do it. The second one, in terms of the motivation, I'm naturally just a person who gets passionate about just about anything. So I have to be careful what I get involved with, because I do a lot of different things. I'm very passionate about what I do in terms of work, but I just started paragliding and then I get obsessed with paragliding, and I started paramotoring, I fly manned helis, I ride mountain bikes, I do a lot, I do too much. So just naturally, I'm a very passionate person in what I do, so it's not difficult to keep that passion in the business. And literally, I go to work, there's 12, we have 2 older people, but I go to work with a bunch of young, people, and we build machines that we hope will fly. It's very different, it's exciting, everything, and it's I wouldn't say stressful, I don't like that word, but it's incredibly challenging. And that alone, I think, is what keeps us going.
Thanks. We'll get this question here, and then the last question.
Hi there. Just the sort of nuts and bolts type questions. I'm very interested as to where you source your basic components from, like the vertical motors you use for the lift, and also once you transcend to forward flight. Is that electric powered or is that then an internal combustion?
It's internal combustion, so it's what I call a double hybrid, being a multi-rotor and a fixed wing, but it's also electric and fuel driven. We make a lot of the components ourselves, so the composite work we do ourselves. A lot of the holders and mounts and things we 3D print, we sand and we paint. It's much quicker and much more cost effective than trying to do molds. We've done molds and the multi-rotors if we do parts in mass. We can CNC aluminium. But over the years, we've got our specific suppliers who do things really well. A lot of it is Chinese, and this is no joke. By the time, if you take it, I'll try and be quick, but on a timeline to get it, okay, how can I word this? To get a batch of aluminium components for, let's say, our motor mount or something, we have a very fancy vibration motor mount that we did, but to get a batch of aluminium components made, so from the date of order to when we actually receive those batch of parts, regardless of how many, is pretty much the same time from the, tweaking the design, sending it to the manufacturer to getting it, is usually quicker than getting a quote from a South African client, a company. And if you do get that quote, it's like 5 times the price. And then when you do get the product, it's 5 times worse. So we do quite a lot of the small things. It comes from China. We've been working with a Chinese manufacturer they're probably the most well-known or established brushless motor manufacturer in the world, T-Motor. We've been working with them for 7-8 years, and we've never had any issues. So you kind of get to know where you get your things from. And your other question, it's a electric propulsion, so we have quite a big battery pack for the vertical tank on land. But once we transition, it's a combustion engine and a 3-liter fuel tank, and we can do 12 hours endurance.
So you can shut that down and start it up in the air?
The combustion engine runs regardless, so you start it on the ground. This is the transition specifically. Well, the bigger one, you'll be able to start it, and the bigger one has a generator as well that generates power and charges the batteries and payloads and that kind of thing. But yeah, if you start the combustion engine on the ground and then the electric engines take off, we have videos on our website, and then the electric motors basically, and that's where the real magic happens, is the transition. That's why we called it the transition from hover to fixed wing. It's incredibly complex, the code and everything that has to happen for an aircraft aerodynamically to go from standstill, but you're not on a runway, you're already 30 meters in the air, to go from standstill to forward flight. Yeah.
Great.
Hi, my name is Jabu. Just a quick question, man. So the drones that you built, I'm looking at your website, and they look like planes. So obviously when you started, you were doing media, video, and all of that. So now with the current work that you're doing, out of interest, which sector are you focusing on? And another question is, you've just mentioned it now in terms of like competition and whatever. Do you actually have competition? Because like most things nowadays come from China and whatever. The things that we do here, they can do quicker. Everything there is like mass production. If there is competition, then what are some of the strategies to maybe like deal with that? Because you build, but I can go and buy multiple drones out there. But looking at yours, it's not a normal drone. You're selling airplanes.
Yeah. So our aircraft is what you would technically call a hybrid fixed wing, or a VTOL, vertical takeoff and land fixed wing. So it operates as a fixed wing during its mission, and it's fully autonomous. So you can program a ground control station, flip a button, and it'll take off, transition, fly, back transition, and land without pilot input. You usually have a pilot for takeoff and land, depending on the weather, but yes, it is a fixed wing aircraft with a multi-rotor component built into it. And because of the long range and the endurance and the speed, it is a fixed wing, so it flies faster, but we specifically aerodynamically designed it to fly slow. So a typical fixed wing would fly at 110, 120 k's an hour. Ours flies at 75 k's an hour. So aerodynamically, we have washout, dihedral, winglets, so it's very, very efficient. We have internal antennas to reduce drag and that kind of thing. So we can fly slow because data capturing flying slow speed is much easier. But based on that, the applications, typically the two main ones would be mapping, large areas of land with various types of cameras, whether it be LiDAR, high-res or multi-hyperspectral. And then the other one, probably the biggest one, is kind of patrolling, surveillance, security, that kind of thing, with high-end, very expensive dual sensor payloads. And then your second question, competition? No. As obviously with any product that starts out, there's a lot of companies now doing fixed wing hybrid aircraft. Some of them are tail sitters, so they stand straight up and they take off and then they kind of fly that. There's a lot of problems with the wind because they have to sit straight up into the wind. So if there's any wind, they typically tip over before they've even taken off. But yeah, there's quite a few companies who are building a variety of different type of fixed wing aircraft. But our core with Steady Run and with this as well has been for the performance. There's no aircraft that we know of that can do 12 hours endurance and has a performance and features hours that's under $100,000. So that's kind of, we marry those two, $95,000 for the full aircraft. And then we have features that equate to a system or relative system that'll be closer to $1 million.
Great. Wow. Thank you very much, Duran. I think this has been like one of the most inspirational, one of the most educational startup grind events we've ever had. And I'm sure that a lot of people have learned a lot of things. And for you, just breaking the mold and showing us how you can do something, especially with we use self-taught and use self-funded, and we just make things happen. Thank you very much for sharing that, and thank you for flying all the way from George, from Knysna, to come and share a story here.
No problem, it's a much shorter flight than our drones.
I was thinking, like, did you get powered by one of your drones? But one time, I think I look forward to flying one of your helicopters. It's like one of my most exhilarating flights I ever had was in a helicopter. Like, whoa.
Yeah, the paramotoring is, I thought the helicopter is the coolest thing, but paramotor, it's a lot more scary, but it's more exhilarating. But yeah, I appreciate you having me. It's awesome to be here. And if anyone's in the Knysna area, what a horrible place to come. Give us a call, pop in, and we can show you what we do and meet the team. Yeah, it's awesome.
A big hand for